Only 4 races left to determine the fate of 2024, but Verstappen won't enter these with high spirits. Even worse, the next race will start with a penalty after Red Bull dropped a bombshell on him. After losing 10 points in his battle with Norris, Verstappen will have to start the Brazil GP with a penalty due to an engine change. Things are starting to look worse for the Dutchman, at least that's according to his own team boss. Verstappen himself has consistently refuted the claim that he races Norris harder. When it came to dealing with Lewis Hamilton in 2021, he faced the same charges, and the Turn 4 Brazil incident sparked a heated title struggle. But Mexico proved that Verstappen takes far more liberties when competing against his nearest title opponent. Let's compare. When Sainz passed on Turn 1, Verstappen did not defend at all. Instead, he sought to win the switchback into Turns 2 and 3, maneuvers that Sainz had anticipated and assured that he covered off. Perhaps Verstappen sensed that the Ferrari would overtake him anyhow, or he suspected that he would be able to outfox his competitor right away. The Turn 4 and Turn 7/8 scenarios with Norris are different, yet they both fall into the grey area of etiquette. The second of the two was perhaps the more bizarre circumstance. Verstappen just decided to force Norris off the road and complete the overtake, banking on the McLaren driver backing up. This is not a request for Verstappen to modify his driving style, since he will not listen. And everyone wants to see hard but fair racing, as proved by the Mercedes too, and Verstappen can do it. But when he sees a rival in his mirrors, he gets a noticeable itch on the back of his neck and occasionally feels compelled to scratch it. The conclusion to the opening thing is this: if Verstappen decides to continue as is, Norris must find a way to exploit it, and there appeared to be hints he was doing so in Mexico. Austin's crises revealed the flaws in the racing criteria, but in some ways reinforced them, since no urgent modifications were made to the regulations. Turn 4 is one example. Now that the be alongside at the apex regulation has been explained, Norris knows he must be present while challenging Verstappen. The charge around the outside was risky, but it was no different from Verstappen's deft touch on the brakes at Kota Turn 12. In both occasions, the drivers earned their space. This forced Verstappen to choose between accepting Norris's inside line for Turn 5 and just running his title opponent off the track. He chose the latter. Norris, who had cut over the grass and briefly held the lead, let Sainz back through. Verstappen, who believed Norris had passed him off the track, most likely anticipated to be let through as well. When he wasn't, he had two options: wait it out and urge his squad to intercede, or simply drive his title opponent off the road. He chose the latter. This is an exploitable weakness. Attempting to draw the foul, while guaranteeing no harm to his own race, might be a viable strategy for Norris to employ the next time he's in close quarters with his championship challenger. Closing a 47-point gap with 4 races remaining is a difficult task, but pitting Verstappen against himself may be the best way to halt his title chase. Getting the apex in Brazil's Turn 4 might be a nice place to start, if they even get close to each other in Brazil. And as Max Verstappen might face an engine change grid penalty at this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix, they might now meet on the track at all, especially with Red Bull concerned about his lack of straight-line speed. The Dutchman struggled at the Mexico GP, with engine issues during practice on Friday, prompting an unscheduled power unit replacement for the remainder of the weekend. While the usage of his pool engine resulted in no more technical concerns, its heavy mileage reduced its performance and handicapped the 3-time world champion in the race. Before DRS was triggered, Verstappen topped out at 251.4 km/h, significantly behind teammate Sergio Perez's 253.4 km/h. Verstappen was the second slowest of all at the first intermediate trap, clocking 299.6 km/h compared to Perez's 303.1 km/h and championship contender Lando Norris's 307.9 km/h. With Red Bull already on the back foot with its RB20 unable to match Ferrari and McLaren's racing form, the team understands it needs to commit to a new power unit to enhance Verstappen's chances, and Interlagos makes sense because it is an easier circuit to overtake. While Verstappen's penalties for driving violations against Norris were the main topic of discussion during the race, Red Bull claims that his lack of speed is a far larger concern. Red Bull Motorsport advisor Helmut Marko said, "More alarming is that we couldn't make the tyres work, both medium and hard. We were nowhere near the two front teams, and I guess part of the problem is that Friday, we couldn't drive because of the engine problems. We have to do something, that's clear. We also will have to change the engine because we had been so slow on the straight. This engine, which was in the car, was not supposed to be in the car, so most likely Brazil could happen." Marko said that the engine Verstappen used in the Mexico race was only supposed to be used in practice sessions for the rest of the season. "The engine we had in there was no longer intended for the race, and the older an engine gets, the more its performance diminishes," explained the mechanic. The penalty would be 5 places. That wouldn't be so severe in Brazil, for example, where you can overtake relatively easily. But we saw that we were missing 3 to 8 kilometers per hour on the straights. Verstappen now leads Norris by 47 points in the standings, and any engine penalty would only result in a grid drop for the main Grand Prix, not the sprint race held in Brazil on Saturday. It will be interesting to see if Verstappen is able to get close to Norris during the race with a 5-pace grid penalty. He will be hoping that Norris has a slip-up in qualifying. As for the penalties, Verstappen will be hoping to avoid them in Brazil this weekend. And if he does end up getting another one, Zak Brown will be hoping they will be even more severe. As the McLaren CEO feels Max Verstappen's penalties at the Mexican Grand Prix were probably not enough, and has called for a halt to his aggressive racing with Lando Norris for the remainder of F1 2024. The latest scuffle between Verstappen and Norris came just 7 days after the latter received a 5-second penalty for passing Verstappen off the track in the final laps of the United States Grand Prix, with McLaren's appeal rejected by the FIA in Mexico. Brown argued after the race in Mexico that Verstappen's penalties were probably insufficient. He also advocated for cleaner racing from the Red Bull driver in the last 4 races in Brazil, Las Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. Asked if Verstappen's Mexican GP penalties were fair, Brown said, "Probably not enough. It's getting a bit ridiculous. I applaud the FIA stewards. Enough is enough. Let's just have some good, clean racing moving forward." Put to him that McLaren could even take their concerns over Verstappen's on-track conduct to FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem, he added, "I think the stewards are on it. I think that's clear by the penalties that they assess, so I don't think we need to do anything. Let the stewards do their job. They did a good job this weekend." McLaren are on track to win their first Constructors' Championship since 1998, although their advantage over Ferrari was sliced to 29 points as Sainz earned his 2nd straight victory for the Scuderia. Brown has refused to rule out Red Bull, despite the fact that the defending champions are presently 54 points behind the leaders. Addressing the Constructors' title race, he said, "It's a lot tighter than I'd like it to be, but it's great for Formula One. Great to see Ferrari and McLaren going at it for the World Championship. Certainly can't rule out Red Bull, they're not far behind, but it's going to be an exciting finish to the season." What are your thoughts on Red Bull's chances, especially now that Perez seems to be fully done? And what about Verstappen's chances this weekend? Will he be able to outscore Norris again? Or will he be on a damage limitation mission? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.